They've inhabited fairy tales and folklore for centuries, guarding bridges and stalking dark forests. But is there any truth behind the mythology of trolls? Could they even exist today? In this episode, we're discussing tales of real life troll encounters. Welcome to Shadowland, everybody.
Welcome.
This is a podcast that shines a spotlight on stories of the supernatural, mysterious, eerie, and unexplained. Stuff like
Poltergeists.
sprites,
Energy vortexes.
giants,
Stargates.
vampires,
MK Ultra.
underground cities,
Time travel.
Atlantis,
Weird science.
trolls,
Wormholes. Trolls.
stuff like that.
Stuff like that.
So I'm Christina Callery,
And I'm Seth Jablon.
and today we're going to be talking about
Trolls.
trolls.
Yes. But first, I think we're going to try and do some news of the day, right?
Yeah, we got a new feature. We thought it would be really cool if we started off every episode with news items. So anything that's happening in the realm of the weird and strange and eerie and paranormal.
Yep. So today I've got a story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, I don't know if it's necessarily paranormal, but well, it's not. But
Well, it
it's
doesn't
kind
have
of,
to be.
yeah, it doesn't have to be. It's cool though. And that is that they found these fossils of this giant parrot in New Zealand.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
A giant parrot? How
Giant-
big is how
3
big?
feet tall.
Wow.
Right. So I mean, that's like up to your hip. That's giant.
That's yeah.
And so
I mean, is this a prehistoric parrot?
yeah.
What,
So
like what? Okay.
this lived. So they named it the particular one that they found Heracles because it's like so giant. But it was a flightless bird. It lived 19 million years ago, which is a long time ago, but it's not like that long ago, right? I mean, how old are dinosaurs? When was like the Jurassic period? I guess I should know.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah. Well, anyways, a while ago, but it's been
Been
a
a few
minute.
years.
But I don't know. I mean, like, I love stuff like this because it's like the giant birds that lived in New Zealand up until like what, like the 1800s or early 1900s or something, right? Or was it in New Zealand? No, it was like Madagascar or something. There's those like massive elephant birds. They were like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 feet tall, maybe taller than that. They were definitely like would tower over a man, but everyone ate the eggs because they were so delicious. They would make these like giant omelets from them. And so they went extinct, which is not funny. But it's just interesting that they keep finding these like weird animals. I mean, we're about to do a story that's, ostensibly about, what you could call a cryptid and just how some cryptids, eventually became real creatures when they've actually found them, And so this parrot was real. It lived to be 80 years old.
What did it
Some of them,
eat?
other parrots.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's just giant parrot running around, eating parrots, just living life. I think it lived on the New Zealand South Island. So I think it just like, sort of like ruled the bird kingdom there. I
it
imagine
was like the T-Rex of parrots.
it was like the but it was almost more like the Brontosaurus because it's like was so huge that it couldn't fly. So I don't know if it had, I don't know if other, I don't know, was there pterodactyls around 19 million years ago?
I just looked up the Jurassic period, and
Oh, yeah.
it starts at like 200
200
million
million
years
years
ago to
Okay.
1.5, something
So that's
like
pretty long ago. So 19 million is like in the grand scheme of things, not that far.
It's pretty recent.
Pretty recent. Who knows? Maybe there's still some out there running around.
That would be awesome.
That would be
I
awesome.
would love that.
Okay, cool. So, yeah. So, I guess that's the news. Unless, do you have something that you want to
That's
share?
great.
Yeah.
I love that. No, I don't. But
Okay,
I'm
next
gonna
time.
have
next
something
time.
for next time.
We don't have to do
Next
it every
for
time.
sure.
Just like when we have. I just saw that and I was like, oh, that seems like it'd be kind of cool to bring up.
It's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, totally. So trolls. And I think you're going first, yes?
Yes, this time I'm going first, Seth.
Okay. All right, well, go for it.
Yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about trolls. In my mind, it was kind of like all jumbled together with ogres and goblins and gnomes and, you know,
Yeah, same.
all of these fairy tale mythology creatures. Um, but I learned a lot about trolls in my research here. And basically, like, they've been part of Scandinavian lore for centuries. Like, it goes back to the Vikings and like Norse mythology, which I didn't know.
Interesting.
So for people who don't know what trolls are, and I was one of them, basically they're kind of described as these giant, super strong creatures. They're not so bright. Um, they started out as creatures that fought the Norse gods, but over the years, the mythology kind of changed around them. So after the advent of Christianity, um, they gained attributes in the mythology, like they hated the smell of Christians and the sound of church
Right, I heard
bells.
that one. Yeah.
Another interesting fact is that sunlight can turn them to stone, which makes sense because a lot of the local terrain in those areas, the rock formations actually look like they have humanoid shapes, so they look like trolls. And we'll post some of those pictures. There are different types of trolls. So there are forest trolls, cave trolls, lake trolls, mountain trolls. I think I was basically mostly aware of the bridge trolls,
Yes.
that
Well, that
they
definitely
are.
made it into some of like the Grimm's fairy tales and stuff like that, right?
Right, with the riddles and all of that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But so, these days most people don't believe in trolls anymore. But I guess there's kind of, in Iceland, there's sort of a respect, for
Yeah.
what they call them the hidden folk. So, elves, trolls, all of that. I think they're a little more open minded about whether or not they exist. And I apologize right now. I'm going to butcher the names that I'm going to mention tonight. I know we have like a few listeners in Sweden, so
Yes, yes.
I apologize beforehand. Um, okay, so I have two stories, and the first one is pretty old, takes place in 1846, and it is the tale of the Icelandic sea troll.
Oh, cool. Sea troll.
A sea troll. So, in 1846, at some point, I don't have an exact date here, a trader named, and apologies to Icelandic people everywhere, Sigtryggur Sigurdsson
Totally knew
was
it.
nailed it. All right, was walking home at night along a beach in Husavik, Iceland. So this was his usual route. It wasn't any place different. He took the same route home quite often. Um, but it's nighttime, and he looks and he sees this strange humanoid creature coming up out of the sea. And as he's watching, it starts heading toward him. And he described it as something that he'd never seen anything like it. It was big, it was gigantic, and it was moving pretty fast. It was like sprinting towards him.
Whoa.
Yeah. So he freaked out and he ran to this nearby hill where he picked up a tree branch to protect himself and kind of like use as a weapon if he needed to. And it turns out he did need to because this crazy sea troll caught up with him and attacked him, and he basically got into like a hand-to-hand combat with it,
What?
where he's like fighting and he's using his like tree branch to defend the creature off. And finally, he was able to land a good blow on the troll's arm. And he hit it so hard that he said it broke like at the elbow. So then at this point, the troll howled, ran away, and goes back into the sea. Meanwhile, this guy, Sigurdsson, is Sigurdsson?
We'll go with that.
We'll go with Sigurdsson. Was left badly injured and with all of his clothes torn and in tatters, but he escaped with his life, and his story became local legend and eventually turned into troll folklore.
Wow,
So
that's a really intense story. Like,
it is an intense
it's
story.
like
It's like with a battle with a troll.
totally, it's like a battle. It's not like, oh, this one dude like thought he saw this behind a tree or something. It's like, no, this like thing attacked him out of the sea.
Something came and attacked him.
Something came
Yeah.
and attacked him, and then went back in. Wow, that's crazy. You said it was in the 1800s or something.
Yes, 1846.
Oh wow, okay. So like, I mean, old enough that it's like an old story, but also like, recent enough to have been recorded or recorded in some way, or at least folklore around then. And I don't know when it was first recorded, but
Yeah, I found this on the Reykjavik grapevine,
oh,
by the
cool.
way. Yeah, so it was kind of like a deep dive to try and
Right,
find some
right,
troll stories. So you and I both found that there aren't a lot of troll accounts out there.
right. They're mostly like mostly like mythological, and then the more recent ones they're very varied, right?
Yeah. Um, but that being said, apparently there are still a lot of reports. Like, people tell the cops, "Oh, I've seen this troll," um, but it just apparently hasn't made it onto the internet or something.
Right, right. We'll check back. We'll check back in
We
a few.
will. And actually, if you have a good troll story, please send it to us.
Yes, yes, please.
Shadowlandpodcast at
We would
gmail.com.
love a troll story.
So my second story kind of is sort of like a hybrid, troll alien. It kind
Awesome.
of, touches on both. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like tell this story. And I think at a later time when we're doing aliens again, this needs to go into greater detail because there
Okay.
there were a lot of crazy things happening in it.
Oh, cool. Okay. Great.
So this took place on January 7th at around 5 p.m. in 1970 in Imjarvi, Finland. Two men, one was a farmer and his name was Esko Viljo. He was 38 years old, and the other one was a forester named Arno Heinonen. He was 36, and they were skiing. It's dark out, it's winter in Finland, and by 5 p.m., it's basically nighttime. And they were both, I guess, competitive skiers. They were really good at it. And this was something that they had done often because they took the same route. So they'd come down this little hill to a glade where they often took a break. And basically, it was really cold out, minus 17 Celsius and windless. So those are the conditions. And they saw this bright light in the sky that approached them, and it was emitting a weird buzzing noise. And they described it as being around 10 feet wide, metallic, with a flat bottom. So it kind of sounds like your standard flying saucer shape. And then it was covered in this strange, luminous, reddish gray mist at first. So it has like this strange reddish fog attached to it. And it descended to about 10 to 12 feet over the ground, at which point the buzzing sound stopped. And Heinonen said that it was so close he could have touched it with his ski pole. So it's obviously coming down to meet with them or something. And at this point, it shot out a powerful beam of light through an opening in its center at the bottom of the craft. And this light lit up an area. They described the diameter as being around 3 feet across in the snow. And then at this point, the reddish mist descends again. And when it cleared, the men could both see that standing about 10 feet away, a 3 foot tall humanoid creature was there in the beam of light. And in its hands, it's carrying a black box that has a pulsating yellow light on it. And this is interesting the way they describe it. So the reason why it's included with troll stuff is because it looked sort of troll like. They said it had like a pale waxen face. It had like a hooked nose and pointy ears. Um, its outfit was pretty interesting. It had on light green coveralls. Um, I love some
Yeah,
coveralls,
right.
so like,
So specific.
yeah, yeah. With darker green knee boots, white gauntlets, and a conical metal hat.
Sounds kind of
So
fresh. Sounds like a kind of fresh outfit.
it really does, and it's like a space troll.
Yeah, well, you gotta look good if you're gonna be a space troll.
So basically, there are different accounts here, and I think we need to go into more detail at a later point. I'll bring some of the details forward. But for right now, basically, they wake up on the mountainside. They had some fuzzy memories of what happened, but it wasn't super clear. And basically, what both men remembered were encountering these troll like creatures and, being surrounded by them in a room. And both men actually needed medical treatment for sunburns afterward,
Oh,
despite
wow.
it
From
being,
like the radiation from the
yeah,
light or whatever. Yeah.
well, yeah,
Or
despite it
something like that.
being
Yeah.
like wintertime and
Right.
basically like sunset or nighttime. Um, and, you know, experts said that their burns could be consistent with radiation exposure. Um, so one of them, Heinonen, reported acquiring psychic powers after the encounter,
Whoa.
which he attributed to an implant that these beings placed in their heads. So that's what
Love
I
it.
have for my troll stories.
Love it. That was great. We should definitely do a space troll episode specifically.
Space trolls, okay.
Because I mean, it's actually not I mean, when we first started talking about doing the trolls, I thought about that too. Because Whitley Strieber, I don't know if you read any of his books, the Communion books at all.
I think I did, or I
Well,
think I read Communion when I was, yeah, younger.
okay. So, well, in Communion, probably I think there's he wrote a bunch of them, but he talks about like his encounters with these aliens, like I think the gray alien, I think is specifically the one, but that they had this sort of cast of blue troll like beings that helped them, that were like their helpers. They were the sort of like worker class, and so sometimes he would be escorted out of his bedroom by these like blue troll like, and he said they were like kind of very squat troll
Hmm.
like creatures. Isn't that crazy
Did they
though? Like
have green jumpsuits on?
I don't remember that. I don't remember, but I think they did wear like some sort of like coverall or jumpsuit or something like that. I don't remember
Hmm.
like the color
Okay.
or anything like that, but I'm sure they wear more than one color. But but yeah, I mean, just like that's so interesting that I mean that there is a little bit of crossover there, and as I was looking at like gnome stories and stuff like that, there's some connected with that, and obviously the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter that we did. They describe them as I think goblins or something like that, but that there's these connections, at least in sort of some of the more recent stories about people likening these creatures to these beings that sort of come out of the sky or ball lightning, and just it's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, just like um, kind of thinking about how these could potentially be connected. I think that's pretty interesting territory because, if these people did actually see this stuff, what was it that they were seeing? There could only be one truth behind that.
Or I mean, I think with some of this phenomena, things over time, different phenomena that happen get sort of lumped together in different ways, right? Like, I'm gonna do a story here in a minute that's even a different take on sort of the trolls, and so
Yeah,
these names they
it's like
kind of
contemporary trolls. What
right
you're going to be
contemporary
doing?
trolls, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like they're sort of one set with sort of one culture and people, and then that word gets translated over, and describes another phenomenon. It may or not be the same one, or you know what I mean. So, but there is something interesting about, I think, more about the commonalities that are sort of found than what sets them apart. But That was really interesting. I really liked both of those. Okay, so you ready for me to do my story?
I can't wait.
All right, let's do it. So, my story is about the road troll.
The road troll.
Yes, I love how
Love it.
specific this is. And, I don't know if there's any Scandinavia or Icelandic legend specifically about road trolls. I don't know if you came across any. There is a road
It seems to be a
troll
thing
in Norway.
where they hang out by roads.
It
like
is? Oh, okay.
highways.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Well, this one is about a series of sightings in America. So I guess this would be the American road troll. Road troll. The first story starts in 1981 with a man named Gary Durbin. And he was a trucker from Effingham, Illinois. I think I said that right. So basically, it starts with him driving through the Tyson Mountain Range in Arkansas, and he was driving to Chicago carrying chickens. I don't know why, but I like that detail. It's a
I love that.
truck full of chickens, and so it was obviously
Sounds
very.
loud.
What's that? Yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
loud.
yeah. It was very late at night, and he was on this like super remote road, as many mountain roads are, with lots of hairpin turns. Probably a pretty scary place to be. Even for a seasoned trucker. But basically, all of a sudden, he comes upon what he thinks is this homeless man standing in the dark at one of the turns, and he's just like standing there. And so, I mean, that sight alone's got to be kind of pretty creepy.
Yeah, that would be really creepy.
Just driving by yourself through some mountain road and there's just anybody standing there is pretty creepy. But the way he describes him is even creepier. And he describes him as disheveled, hairy, and with a wooden peg leg.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but
Well, I mean, that's
it's like it's very specific. Yeah,
it's very specific.
I think he needed your giant prehistoric parrot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So he keeps. So anyway, so he sees this guy and he's like, okay, this is, he thinks to himself, this is some kind of like mountain man or something like that, or maybe someone trying to get run over or whatever. And he doesn't think too much about it. He keeps going, drives on into the night. So he makes his way to a truck stop farther down the road where he like sort of stops for some coffee, and then he continues on past the Missouri state line where he eventually stops at a rest stop. Does his thing there, and as he's pulling out, on the back onto the on-ramp onto the highway, he again sees the hairy peg-legged man just standing in the road staring at him. Right, and so this time this sight really shocks him. Right,
so he's either hitched a ride,
well, that's what he thinks at
or
first,
something,
else. Right,
yeah.
And so, it's pretty odd that he would, even if he hitched a ride, that he would make it there ahead of them and be sort of standing there waiting for him. Certainly conceivable, right? If he hitched a ride with another trucker, he did stop along the way. Could have happened, right? Anyways, but still, like, I feel like with a lot of these stories, there's this, I live in New York City. You lived here for a long time too. Like, you see people, homeless people and stuff. Like it's you don't get a sense of the paranormal. It's just, it's like when you see someone on the side of the road. I'm sure that's a much more shocking experience. But what I sort of took away from a lot of these stories is there's this feeling of something else going on.
Yes,
and so,
there's a name for that actually. I think.
Oh, really?
It's numinous, I believe.
Numinous. I've never heard that before. Whoa. So, anyways, but basically, again, he sort of lets this go. The thing is that he proceeds to see this man or whatever this thing is over the next few years 5 different times in several different states. Ranging from Arkansas to Texas to Missouri to Mississippi and as far down as Florida. So, again, you could certainly imagine someone walking around that territory, but, with a peg leg, it's, it seems a little odd. It seems a little unlikely, especially if someone's, living off the forest or living off, or if they are homeless and they're, not seen in other towns nearby, that he's only sighted on the side of the road. That's very odd, right? Especially someone with a peg leg walking around that part of the country, you would think there would be more sightings of this person or creature, whatever, outside of being beside of the road, in towns and such. But again, certainly conceivable. But so there's more stories, however, of this being, and a number of them are chronicled in Jerry D. Coleman's book, Strange Highways, and I think he did a second book, More Strange Highways, which I haven't read, but I've read a number of excerpts from them about this.
So
this
what are they,
road
like
troll.
true stories of kind of crazy events that happen along the highway, or?
Well, specifically about this peg leg man, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
so there's a number of other accounts. So I'm going to read you a couple. Before I do, I'm just going to read you what Durbin had to say, what his description of this guy was. And he says he stands 6 to 6.5 feet. His peg is just below his right knee, made of wood. He's always seen by the road towards the evening, just past a rest area or truck stop, leaning towards the road, only moving his head a little. Very long hair and beard, light brown in color, covering his entire face except the eyes. Which is that? I mean, that's a pretty hairy face, right? Old type
Oh.
clothes, ripped and torn, and they always seem like the same clothes, right? So, and then the creature carries a little hobo type pouch with him always, which I love that detail
Like on a
too.
stick?
I imagine that's a hobo type pouch, right? That's what I'm picturing at least. So it's sort of uncanny that a lot of these sightings that happened after this, they all describe this person or being the same way, right? And so again, you're like, oh well, if this is the same guy, obviously it would be. But you think over the course of 20 years, someone in that condition, the clothes would change, they would appear to get older, they would hunch. Do you know what I mean? Like a 6 foot tall hobo living in the with a peg leg walking around the South for 20 years with a hobo pouch, you would imagine there'd be some mileage on that. But
Yeah.
anyways, so in 1983, Coleman, the writer of that book, he interviewed a woman named Barb from Des Plaines, Iowa. I think I'm saying that right. Who had a story. She claimed that she went on a road trip to Alabama to see her sister, and they met up on this interstate by Green Pond. And there they saw this wild-looking man beside the side of the road. They described him again as being about 6 feet tall, with very long hair that hung in his face, and clothes that looked as if a car dragged them, right? As well as a wooden peg leg. And those are her words, which I think is interesting. She later felt that the sighting sort of freaked them out, and they kind of I think left early, right? And so later she sees this event as being some sort of warning to a potential disaster. So apparently, after, and maybe this is just a bit of synchronicity here, apparently after seeing him, they go home and they actually arrive back 3 hours earlier than they had planned. And so when they returned, they had found her sister's son had fallen out of a tree and gotten a very severe compound fracture, right? Which was, a compound fracture. The bones actually sticking through the skin, and he's
Ugh.
profusely bleeding. And so, since they had returned early, they were actually able to rush him to the hospital without further event. But imagine if they got there 3 hours later and he was helpless. It certainly could have been disastrous.
So basically, his appearance was like a good or helpful in some way.
Was helpful in some way, right? That, and it kind of, or just this sort of warning of potential disaster, right? Like, sort of reminds me of how a lot of people see the Mothman, right? As this thing that sort of shows up at these moments. And so I think the guy who wrote this book also sort of has this feeling. A lot of people have this feeling that it's a significant thing to see this creature or whatever this is. And so on through the years, there's more and more sightings even up until 2003, when a pastor named Jim Washington saw this man, or what he described as a creature, limping along the highway as he drove along to a church service. And he's like, he looks like the guy's in need. So he turns around to go find him, and it's vanished. So just another sort of telling of this, of whatever this thing is. And so I don't know. I mean, the word troll, I don't know, somehow gotten in there. I don't know if this thing's a troll, a vagrant, a ghost, some type of weird hallucination.
Yeah, was there any reason why they decided it was a troll? Was there anything about the facial features or?
Well, I mean, I think that, it's a wild man, that it's this very tall and sort of hairy, and, it looks,
the hairy
or he
part.
looks, sort of not altogether human. That's sort of wearing sort of tattered clothes, and, I imagine, the side of that might look very sort of troll-like, or so. I don't know if it was much more than that. If it could have been just the sort of trucker lingo, that sort of coined it into legend. But there's certainly something that people are seeing. And again, it could be simple as a person, but it's eerie, right? The whole thing is, or a ghost.
Could be a ghost.
There are haunted roads, I think, in like Scotland and in America, where people see recurring ghosts along a side of the road. So it certainly wouldn't be the first time that something like that happened, but it's sort of all over the country. It seems kind of odd.
Yeah, and it's the same figure, like described in the same fashion.
Yeah, exactly. Like as if it hadn't aged, and
Right, yeah.
But the wooden leg is
By
just
different people. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's like this wooden leg, like what's that about? Like, when did people stop having wooden legs?
I need to look into that. Because now you think things like, old sea captain or pirate or something like that having a peg leg, but I don't know.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what this, but like, it's just one of those interesting phenomena that like, it's so hard to categorize, right? And people, put words on it, and they sort of stick. But that there's this phenomena that's happening, over the course of decades that doesn't seem to be really going anywhere. And so I'm interested, to see what, in 10 years, are people still going to be seeing, it's kind of like Spring-Heeled Jack or something. Ooh, we got to do it. We should do it. Definitely do a episode on him. But, where it's like people see him over the course of like 100 years and stuff,
Yeah.
And then like, are these stories just connected tangentially? Are they just similar stories, and then they get fused together into one person? But anyways, that is the story of the American road troll.
Love that.
Cool.
That's really cool. So what do you think, Seth? What do you think about the troll?
I don't know. I mean, from what I don't necessarily even know what a troll. I mean, I know what we've discussed about what a troll is mythologically. I don't know what that equates in terms of like anything specific or real. But I don't know. This sounds like some type of phenomena. Maybe it's some sort of ghost or spirit of some kind. Not necessarily like a ghost of a person, but some sort of like supernatural entity or something like that. I don't know, or just some.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking ghost with this one, because
just
because of the way that it's appearing.
But usually those
never changes the way it looks.
Yes, but a lot of those like road hauntings, they're in the spot where a sort of death occurred. They don't, from what I mean, not that I'm any sort of expert on the subject, but that all the ones I've heard, they're like at a specific spot, not that there's this ghost wandering around the American highway. So that seems, I don't know, to put it in a different category to me.
Although honestly, like if you were a ghost, wouldn't you want to wander around? You wouldn't want to just like hang out on the same stretch of road. Wouldn't that be really boring?
I guess that is true. I guess if you have like, you think of ghosts being like stuck in houses and stuff. So it's like, if you can be like a traveling, hobo ghost,
right.
Why not?
Riding the rails. Yeah.
Seeing America all over again. Yeah, why not? Cool. Okay. Well,
Cool.
those
This
were
is
fun. That was fun. I enjoyed that one. I feel like we learned some stuff, and
Yeah, me too. And actually, I would
yeah.
love if there's anybody out there that has a good troll story. I'd love to read more. I was kind of bummed that there weren't more
Yeah, I thought
actual
there would be.
reports
Yeah, same,
because I know
same.
they happen.
I'm sure if we dug around, there would be some, but yeah, a lot of them were sort of all kind of all over the place, whereas like
Hmm.
I found some stuff about gnomes and they were all like super specific, and
Yeah,
I don't
there's a
know.
lot of gnome
There's a lot of
stuff.
gnome stuff, so we're definitely going to do a
Yeah.
gnome episode. But okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, send us your stories. Our email is shadowlandpodcast@gmail, right?
Yes, that's it.
Cool. And we got some coming up. We're going to do Spooktober, right? That's what.
Yes, Spooktober's coming.
So we
So
got
it's
some
all spooky
all
stories.
spooky. We got some special episodes coming. I think multiple ones for October. So it'll be fun. We're looking forward to it.
Definitely. And if you have any ghost stories, please send them along. We'd love to include them in a listener episode.
Even ghost stories of someone that one of your friends that told you, you can tell us. They don't have to be. We'll take second and third hand ghost stories.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention before we say goodbye, I had something kind of weird happen for the last episode. We did synchronicity,
Oh yeah.
and you had something that was pretty synchronous
Yes.
that had to do with the episode. Maybe you should just like tell people because I had something too
Oh
after the
yeah.
fact.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Oh yeah. Well, just that like the story we had done previously about the time travelers and Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard was used by Carl Jung as an example of synchronicity, about specifically clairvoyance, not the story I told, but the one about him, being at a party and someone having this dream, and so that was just a bit of synchronicity in a episode about synchronicity. So that was kind
Yeah,
of cool.
your your story is aligned.
It was like layers.
So, one of the stories I did was the West End Baptist Church explosion from 1950, where basically all of the choir members were late for different reasons and they all survived what would have been certain death when a church exploded in Nebraska. I had never heard of this story until I researched it. And just a few days later, I put on like an old random episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Guess what they were doing?
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. So,
Wow, wow. So there was like you just
synchronicity.
like turned on the TV and it was like literally them doing this story that you hadn't thought about
Yes.
or for a long time or
That I'd
whatever.
never known about.
Oh, that you had never even known about. Right, right.
No.
That is
And out
that
of
is
all
definitely
of the unsolved
synchronicity.
mystery episodes, I happened to pick that one. So,
Yeah,
pretty
that's
crazy.
pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Well, cool. I'm glad you shared that. Cool. Okay. All right. Well, I feel good. You feel good about this
I feel
episode?
pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I guess until next time.
All right. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.